Good morning, welcome back to The Weekend. And now, former South African President Nelson Mandela turns 90 next week on the 18th of July. It's a birthday party that the whole world wants to take part in. A flurry of events beginning last month have made sure to keep Madiba's name burning bright and on the tips of everyone's lips. As part of the birthday celebrations, all forms of books have been hitting the bookshelves, and one of the latest is a Nelson Mandela authorized comic book. To tell us more about this is Sajak Katu and Vern Harris of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to The Weekender.
Morning.
Vern, let's start with you. Tell me a little bit more about this project, because to say it's fascinating is actually an understatement.
Well, it goes back to 2005 when, through our dialogue program, we realized that young South Africans don't know much about Madiba. They know he was in prison for a long time and that he was the first president, but little else. So we designed a comic series to begin to reach young South Africans. Out of that series came the book.
You know what, Cedric, when you talk about comic series or comic books, I almost get a sense of Superman, Jughead, those kind of comic books, but this is a different style. I mean, this is art.
It is a different style. Look, South Africa and Africa in general don't have a history of comics and so on. We see that in Europe, we see that in North America, and we thought, well, added to the fact that we're bringing in that we need to celebrate Madiba's life and do it in a way that also educates people. So it's not just about entertainment, it's also about education, and it's also about providing access. As Vern has mentioned, this comic series started a couple of years ago, and what we did is we ensured that they were distributed free of charge. 500,000 in newspapers and 500,000 directly to schools through the Ministry of Education.
Vern, tell me about that, the series that Cedric was talking about. 2005, 2007, you started with a similar project, handed it out free. What was the aim then? Was it a similar aim as to the series?
With the book, we're trying to reach an international audience, and we're also trying to reach a readership which can afford books. It's cheap, it's 140 Rand, but with the comics it was free of charge and direct delivery to schools, as Shadrach was saying. Also with the comic series, it was about testing the waters. We got a lot of feedback, we ran focus groups. It's interesting how people responded to the comic books. It's interesting how Madiba responded to the comic books, and we've edited the content in light of that kind of feedback.
What was the feedback?
Well, I think it's true to say Madiba was delighted. As he said at one point, you know, you're really famous when you find yourself to be a comic character.
Yeah.
He also criticized some of the artwork, you know, some of the representations of key events. He found inaccuracies, and we've adjusted those. We had feedback from old friends of his like Ahmed Kathrada, who didn't feel he was handsome enough in the early stages.
Maybe this is a question to both of you. How risky is it to do this with an icon who's regarded, who's revered worldwide as a leader of peace, as a dialogue, who's somebody who is seen not only as an African leader anymore, but as a global leader? How risky is it to do a project like this, Cedric?
Well, there are things that have to be put in there that are slightly uncomfortable, but we've made sure that they're put in there and put in a respectful manner. Just to add on to what Vern was mentioning, we had feedback from children, school children as well, and one of the things they mentioned is, I remember one child maybe a year or so ago saying that, look, I was able to sit down with my grandmother and engage on these historical issues that she'd always spoken about, but I never quite understood. But my grandmother then asked, why isn't this in a language that we speak at home, you know, in Sotho or Zulu or one of those languages? So at this point, we've only been able to produce it in English, but we are hoping that we widen the language availability.
And there are plans to produce in other languages?
Yeah, the next phase is to look at ways of reaching school teachers so that it becomes an instrument for education in classrooms, and then to do versions in other South African languages.
Now, the question I did ask before I got your comment was, how risky was it when you started with this project? I mean, were you actually nervous? I mean, when you're dealing with somebody that's a global icon, surely there must be some nerves.
Well, I think that Madiba has given us some reassurance. He's made it very clear to us that in all the work we do, including the comic series, we don't have to protect him. So we can go into those spaces that are uncomfortable. Shadrach mentioned, he went through 2 divorces, for example. These are painful things, and it's never one side is right, the other side is wrong. And we've tried to suggest that kind of complexity. Also, his mistakes as a politician. We haven't shied away from that.
Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you, I mean, when you read kind of the thank yous at the back, there's some stories here that you can't find in any of the autobiography stuff that has been done on him before. I mean, that in itself must be a coup.
Well, it is, and what we're trying to do is ensure that, with this and a few other projects that we're working on, we're able to bring out stories that have otherwise not come out into the open. There's also another book that has been published only recently, and it's we call it the Madiba Food Book. It's called Freedom from Hunger, and even there we have stories that have otherwise not come out. So that's the whole point of doing a project like this.
How difficult is it to portray Madiba? Because I'm sure there's only pictures of him to a certain point, and then the rest is imagination.
Well, I think the really difficult dimension for us was depicting Madiba as a young person. We did find a photograph which has never been seen before last year of him as a schoolboy at Heeltown. And that's the earliest image we have of him, but he would have been about 18 or 19 then. So depicting him as a toddler and as a young teenager was really difficult. How we started this project was to get the artists to do impressions right the way through his life. And we showed them to him and asked him to respond to that. He enjoyed that particularly, especially the toddler with a big stomach.
Now, if you, whenever you do a story of someone's life and that person is still alive today, will we find another series, or is it going to end here? Will there be another chapter in the Nelson Mandela book?
Look, I think that it's clear that the accounts of Madiba's life have been fairly superficial. Is that the deep archival work hasn't yet been done. We haven't gone into his prison records, into the government records when he was president. What we want to do is to steadily then start to dig deeper and to disclose the complexities and all those little stories, the narratives that haven't been heard before.
Final question, gentlemen, we've run out of time. When can we expect the book in stores?
The book should be available on Wednesday. So it should be available on Wednesday in all South African bookstores.
Gentlemen, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much. And of course, that was Vern Harris and Shadrach Katu from the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Also, don't forget, it's in stores on Wednesday, so go and get it. With that, we take a short break here on The Weekender, but we'll be back after that.